Hello and welcome to Everywoman. I'm Shuli Ghosh. On the programme this week, France gets tough on immigrants as the crackdown takes its toll. The art of fasting, how to keep healthy during Ramadan. And meet China's top model, a woman with brains as well as beauty. We start this week's programme with a horrific story of violence and brutality. Kenya is heading towards parliamentary elections in December, but campaigning has been overshadowed by news of a savage attack on one aspiring female MP. Flora Terra was brutally beaten and tortured outside her home on September the 7th. She says it was an attempt to stop her from running for a seat. Our East Africa correspondent Yvonne Ndege spoke exclusively to Terra in hospital, and she joins us now from Nairobi. Yvonne, this was a particularly vicious attack. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, Shuli, Flora Terra was in the constituency where she's hoping to become an MP. She'd just come off a bus. It was around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and she heard voices, unfamiliar voices, calling her name. She turned around to find 4 or 5 men. They pinned her to the ground. One proceeded to strangle her. The others pulled out her hair with their bare hands. That hair was then mixed with human feces, human waste, and violently stuffed down her throat.
Some quite horrifying details there. And Yvonne, she seems very clear that this attack was politically motivated.
She's absolutely clear of that. When she was coming off that bus, she had a large amount of cash and other valuables. None of this stuff was stolen. The men who attacked her threatened her and told her not to run for the seat, and threatened her about the fact that if she dared to, she would be attacked and she would be in serious danger. There is also a background of politically motivated violence against women in Kenya who want to run for parliament. It's something I asked her about.
And let people not speculate on anything, because nothing was stolen from me. Despite me having so much money in my bag and variables, nothing was stolen from me. And I'll keep on insisting, this is a political question. This is a political action that needs a political answer.
So what kind of condition is Terra in now? And is she still determined to stand?
Well, she's in pretty bad condition. She has spinal injuries and a dislocated knee, but the doctors caring for her are obviously very concerned about the psychological impact that this is going to have on her. When we met her, she told us that she was totally determined to keep running for that seat. She's absolutely determined to become an MP in Kenya. And I asked her about the pain that she's suffering after that ordeal.
Well, the pain is the physical pain. It's not so much than the emotional pain. What I had to go through, eating my own hair and the feces they had come with. Not so many people would understand that. And it's very painful.
And Yvonne, in general, what are the prospects for female candidates in the upcoming elections? Because we know that Kenya only has 18 female MPs out of a total of 222.
That's right, Shuli. Hundreds of women are actually vying for office this time round, but the statistics do not bode well. A recent survey by the UN found that Kenyans are less likely to vote for women. For one reason or another, they just don't trust them. There was also a recent bill that was designed to create 50 new seats specifically for women, and that was kicked out, of course, by MPs who are predominantly male. But back to the report I mentioned, there was also a finding that more women will be elected this year round, but of course nobody knows exactly how many.
Indeed. Well, Yvonne, thanks for updating us on a very disturbing story there. Yvonne Ndege reporting from Nairobi. And we'll be looking at the role of women and politics in Africa later on this year. Now, staying with politics, French President Nicolas Sarkozy is cracking down on illegal immigrants. He wants 25,000 of them deported from France by the end of the year. Samira Babayan is an Armenian living illegally in Lyon. A single mother, Samira knows she and her 2 sons could be deported at any moment. Everywoman reporter Sue Ellicott met the family. The boys' faces have been hidden at Samira's request.
When the children go off to school, I try to give them a big smile because I don't want them to be worried. It makes me feel awful that as a mother, I can't go out with my children. All my friends collect their kids, go to the park, go on walks. That makes me feel so sad to see the parents with their children playing in cafes. I always cry for that. I know that they might find me and deport me straight away.
Samira Babayan lives illegally in the French city of Lyon with her sons. If they go outside together, they risk being deported. On their own, they are safe. France will not deport parents without their children. Family time is always indoors.
Tu vas au parc avec ta maman sans souffrance.
I would like to go to the park with my mum without worrying. I would like to go down the street with whomever I want without being scared.
Samira and her family are luckier than most of the 300,000 illegal immigrants thought to be in France. They'd be missed if arrested. They have friends from school. And the hospitality of Michel Durand, a well-known liberal priest who has given them refuge in his church.
There are some priests who think I'm a bit of an anarchist.
Campaigners for immigrants' rights introduced him to Samira. Tens of thousands of French families, they say, have offered to shelter illegal children. They face up to 5 years in prison and a $4,000 fine if caught.
I know that there's a risk and that I'm operating outside of the law and that I'm committing an act of civil disobedience, but I don't feel that the risk is real. And it's such a basic humanitarian issue that I feel I don't have a choice.
C'est pas toujours facile, il faut un sans-papier de vivre, quoi. On peut dire,
It's not always easy being an illegal immigrant. We can't relax when we're outside. It's strange not having a home and not to feel like you're a child. We're adults, really. We're not like normal kids.
On peut pas être comme des enfants normaux.
Samira's is a kind of half-life. She hides her face when she goes out, earns a bit of money on the black market cleaning houses, though she says she used to be a lawyer. French mothers help her out with money and childcare. Some, like Valérie Tranchon, harboured her children when they first arrived in France.
This woman fled her war-torn country and her husband with a little boy of 3 or 4 years old and a baby, escaped the war and arrived in a new country. This story alone was enough to make me want to help her.
The real luck I've had was in meeting the French people. What do I mean to these people? Nothing. But all these people have taken us to their hearts, shown us love. I want to work. I want the freedom to go outside with my children. I want to be able to do things for my children. I just want legal papers.
So what do these new immigration policies mean for France? Well, I'm joined now from Paris by Stephen Suffren, a French immigration lawyer. Thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Suffren. First of all, there are hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants in France. What kind of tension is this latest crackdown causing?
Again, you have to distinguish between what the police has been doing on the basis of older laws and the fact that they're now in the process, the French government is now in the process of presenting a new law which is probably going to be voted. It's already been voted by the Assemblée Nationale here and will be voted by the Senate sometime next week. The crackdown that you're talking about is something which is really basically a series of police measures. The laws have already been have always been there, but in fact they are being enforced in a way in which they've never been enforced before. There are virtually daily controls on the street of anybody who looks foreign. It's clear that although it's illegal, people are being controlled on the basis of what they look like. That is to say, basically people who are black, people who look Arab, or people who look Asiatic. President Sarkozy has fixed a quota. He says he wants to expel 25,000 people this year.
Yeah, this quota is very interesting because the quota is very interesting that you mentioned, because that seems to be such a draconian measure. Isn't there a question of human rights here?
There's clearly a question of human rights. In fact, sometimes you say you have to laugh about something in order not to cry, right? Even the police here are protesting because, as a practical matter, there are so many police being used to chase illegal aliens that the police are being taken away from their normal function, which is to try to track down people who have committed crimes.
It must be particularly bad for families, for women with children who've been in France for a number of years.
There is a practical level in which it is in fact true that a woman with children is obviously less mobile than somebody who has no children, required to take care of her children, and therefore in a situation which is more difficult, and also subject as a woman to certain kinds of threats, particularly sexual threats or physical threats, which are not generally a problem for single male immigrants. On the other hand, you have to understand that immigration policy in France, I'm giving you my opinion obviously, but immigration policy in France is not dictated really at the moment under President Sarkozy or before when he was Minister of the Interior by real consideration of immigration policy. It's mostly very political.
I want to specifically ask this question. We were talking about human rights and human values before. What do you think these new policies mean, given Sarkozy's quota? What do you think it means for the fabric of French society?
President Sarkozy and the people around him talk about foreigners, but in fact, there's an undercurrent which is a reference not just to people who are illegal aliens here, but even to people who are legal aliens, or people, even people who are French, whose origins are in Africa or in Asia. And the consequence is that this campaign supposedly against illegal aliens is also something which destroys any possibility of real integration of the people who are legally here.
Are women who have children who've been here for a number of years, are they more likely to be able to stay to get legal papers?
Yes, it is more possible for somebody who has children, particularly children who are in school here, to manage finally to get papers. But it's done in a fashion which is tremendously arbitrary and is frequently dependent on the French government's need for publicity, favorable publicity at one moment in time or another.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed for your analysis there. Stephen Suffren speaking to us from Paris. And just to let you know, we did approach the French Interior Minister for a comment, but she declined our request. Well, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, how to fast safely during the holy month of Ramadan. We have some useful tips.